I'll send that to them anonymously, so you don't need to worry about it.
So we won't know it's
Finally, the last section is your email address. If you wish to put it in, we are sponsored by JetBrains. There will be a raffle, and the lucky number picked will receive a license for one of their products, whether it's a full IDE or it's a plug-in library sharper. Usual housekeeping things. Toilets are on the ground floor in that corner over there. There was some beer over there. I don't know if there's any left. Help yourself. But do remember that we get this place from my lab for free every month. So if you'd like to leave a donation, that would be much appreciated, and it goes to keeping this place upright. First, tonight we have Andy Longshore, who will be talking about. We said it was easy.
We didn't say it was easy. We said it was simple.
Yes, that one. That's the one. And without further ado, time.
So, okay, off we go. So we said it was simple. We said it was simple. Right. So this came out of a tweet that Ron Jeffries fired out about a year ago that caught my imagination. Where he said, "Oh, in fact, it's 2 years ago. Bloody hell, doesn't sound like." We didn't say it was easy. We said it was simple. So this got me thinking about it. So it's simple. The Agile Manifesto, simple, individual and interactions over processing tools, working software over comprehensive documentation. It's a bit like one of those gigs where you expect people to join in partway through and then, the popular songs. Customer collaboration, responding to change. Agile Manifesto, great stuff. XP values, courage, simplicity, feedback, communication, respect. Read the t-shirt. Yeah. It's easy.
Very good.
Yeah? Well, it's reasonably simple. Reasonably easy. Sorry, simple rather. So it's reasonably simple. So these are the 12 agile principles. So I'm sure you can all, again, quote these off by heart. But we're getting into things like getting simplicity, technical excellence, delivering working software frequently. So there's more stuff in here, but I'm sure it's still simple. So how hard can it be? Simple. Right, so looking at different people who are involved. I've made one of our team's guinea pigs on this, so they've got their pictures on this. So the developers on the team, it's not easy for them. Yeah, it's simple, but it's not easy. Well, why is it not easy? Okay, they've got to take responsibility for the stuff. They've got to have discipline to follow the processes, even under pressure. When people are screaming for a release. They've got to say no when things can't be done, rather than we'll try. They've got to ask for help when they need it, rather than trying to do everything. They've got to follow through on their retrospective actions, because everybody does that, yeah? They've got to seek feedback, and they've got to keep improving. And they've got to keep refactoring until it's simple. So, that's for the developers. Now, testing specialists, it's not easy for them either. They've got to be more proactive than they would do in a waterfall environment. They've got to get really good at business analysis skills, taking part in the 3 Amigos and things like that. They've got to learn some coding so they can pair with the developers and help them with their tests. They've got to get really good at exploratory testing. We've got to spend a lot of time teaching people about what makes a good test. So this is what, suddenly the tester's plate is a lot more full of stuff they've got to do. Oh, and also they've got to do everything the developers do. DevOps specialists, it's not easy for them. They've got to automate all the things. They've got to master the different tools for deployment, for build, for test, and all the different containers you're using. They've got to refactor the pipeline again for another technology you've brought in, the new technology that's been brought into it. Oh, and also they've got to do all the things the developers have got to do. The product owner. So Sally, the product owner, it's not easy for her because she's got to spend a lot of time out in the building, talking to customers, understanding the market. But she's also got to be available for the team to answer questions and take part in 3 Amigos. They'll be in 2 places at one time. She's also got to find enough time to do enough work on the backlog so the backlog's coherent and ready to go when you get to the next story. And she's also got to deal with various bits of the organisation on behalf of the team, like communicating bad news, i.e. the truth about the delivery schedule, or the changes in features, the features that are not going to be in the next release. So, it doesn't make her life easy. The organisation's technical leadership, ignore this about it. The organisation's technical leadership is not easy for them because they've got to recruit people who can do all this stuff. They've got to then trust them to make good decisions and to prioritise that they're doing the right thing and to ask for help when they need it so that you can step back and get rid of that itch to try and interfere all the time. You've got to deal with the other bits of the organisation on behalf of the team that the product owner doesn't deal with. And they've got to let people get on with making the mistakes and learning as they do that. They're doing stuff, they're making mistakes and stuff and learning on stuff that you could probably already do yourself and you could do it faster yourself, but you've got to let them do it because otherwise it will never work, the team will never gel. So you've just got to get on with all this management crap that you'd rather not do because you'd rather be coding. I know, we'll get a coaching. That'll help out, but it's not easy for them. They've got to try and influence the team in just a couple of days a week, probably. You've got to change the culture, change the working practices. Oops. They've got to set a good, consistent example of how to be an agile developer. And they've got to teach people the same stuff over and over again in different ways without going postal. Now, who can we find who could do that? So it's not easy because you need the discipline. You need to avoid. If anybody's looked at Kinefin framework, you know that there's between simple here and chaotic there. There's like this little bit where you slide down from one to the other because you just become sloppy and stop being disciplined. So we've got to avoid that. Most of the challenges are around soft skills rather than around technology. This is not a techie strong point, so that makes it difficult. You have to change yourself. For all this sort of stuff, the courage and this sort of thing, you have got to be part of that change, which is difficult. And you have to learn when to have iron discipline. We are going to do the tests, we are going to do this. And when you can improvise, it's like, no, we don't need to test that, it's too simple. And the problem is, another problem is your organisation is a square and you're a circle. You want to do all these great agile things in this circle. This is a Jürgen Appello thing, but he talks about with square within the circle within the square. You've got to want to do all these wonderful agile things in here. Your organisation has got a whole bunch of tax it takes on you, and you've got to basically, feed them that tax money while you can carry on doing the agile stuff. But mostly, it's not easy because nobody's told the wider business nobody's sold the wider business on working in an agile way. And agile software development doesn't deliver the benefits unless the whole business is working with the grain. That's why a lot of organisations end up in what I would refer to as Tommy mode. So this is for the older people in the audience. There's the Tommy the Rock Opera, they might remember by the in the mid-70s. There's the deaf, dumb and blind kid who played a mean pinball. It's basically, he had this thing at the end of the film where he let people learn his way of doing things by putting in earplugs and a blindfold and a mouth plug and so on, so that they were deaf, dumb and blind, and they could then learn to be great pinball players. And guess what? They rebelled. They said, we ain't going to do this, this is just too hard, we don't want to be like you, we just want to have the great pinball skills. So sure, yes, this is the way we learn to do this. So that's where you get to, this we ain't going to take mode. You end up with flaccid scrum, cargo cult agile, all this sort of stuff. But XP and the other agile approaches, they only work when you've got the dials turned up to 10. It's no good doing a bit of agile. We're a bit agile on Wednesdays. So remember, we said it was simple. We never said it was easy. If you're finding agile software development easy, you're probably doing it. Thank you.
Any questions for Andy before he sits down?
Hi everyone, thanks for your time tonight. Hello. My name is Nima. I'm here tonight to talk about microservices. Can you?
Sorry. Yeah. The webcam will cut off here.
Okay, of course. Yeah. So, before I start, a little bit of background and why I want to talk about microservices. So, as we all probably heard, microservices is the big buzzword nowadays. So, everyone is talking about microservices. Everyone wants to do microservices. So, how many people here are doing microservices currently? Okay, quite a few. Yeah, good. Yeah. So, in the last few years, I started development in Peninsula Business Services here in Manchester, and then I moved to ThoughtWorks as a consultant and worked at many different projects. And for the last 3 years, I've been using microservices in different projects, different environments. And I saw a lot of projects fail, and I saw a lot of projects succeed. So tonight, I'm not going to convince you why you should use microservices. I'm going to talk about what are the problems that you will see if you are going to use microservices. So, as I said, I was working for Peninsula, then ThoughtWorks. A few months ago, myself and my business partner Kate, we had an idea to change recruitment. So as a developer and a business analyst, we built Astrolab for techie people, and we started it in Manchester. So go and have a look and give us some feedback. And by the way, this is built by microservices. I'm going to use some examples of what we use microservices for and how we built Astrolab during the talk. So on paper, building your application in microservices makes sense, and all of us work with monoliths, with big software that is hard to refactor, it's hard to release, and if we are making changing one part of the software, we have to release everything. If we want to scale only one part of the software, again, we have to scale everything. So we all are familiar with problems of monolith systems, and on a slide, it makes perfect sense to break that big software into smaller pieces and make that complexity of the domain go away. But the question is, if the complexity goes away, where does it go? And I think this is the first problem that I want to talk about. That this complexity that we had in domain in monoliths will go to interaction points between services, and will go to our deployment and releasing strategy. So releasing practices. So when we are working with microservices, releasing deployment becomes very, very hard. So most of us are used to working with monoliths. It means that we have 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 applications that we are running in our CI pipeline. And then we want to jump into microservices world when all of a sudden we want to have tens or even maybe sometimes I saw hundreds of microservices in pipelines. And that is orders of magnitude more complex than running just one single application in your pipeline. So if you're doing microservices and you're not managing operational complexity very well, you're going to see a lot of that. You're going to see a lot of manual testing after each release. You'll usually see massive UI testing frameworks, and in a lot of places, I saw dependency, what people call deployment dependency trap as well. So one of the greatest benefits of microservices is that you can deploy them individually. That means that each service can evolve and can be released without touching other parts of the system. And in a lot of businesses, I saw that because they're not good at managing operational complexity, they have to release everything together. And straight away, you lose one of the biggest benefits of microservices. A recent example of this, actually when we came up with the Astrolab idea, we were commuting to Glasgow every week, not every month. And we were working for a student loans company. And a student loans company, very complex domain, they had 36 microservices, and they had deployment dependency. So it meant that any small change to any service, they had to deploy the whole system, run a lot of manual tests, and then do a lot of testing after that. So that wasn't really an ideal situation, and they didn't get any benefit from using microservices architecture. So one way to manage this is to do DevOps as a team, to embrace DevOps culture, and not have an operational team and a software development team. Not even a software development team and a DevOps person. My advice is to have DevOps as part of your practices, and all of your developers should do DevOps. Another thing is to use cloud if you can. So I've seen many different projects, and the ones that are using cloud are much more successful than the ones that are using on-premises infrastructure, simply because there are a lot of tooling around managing complexity for things like AWS or Azure. But if you are moving to a microservices architecture, this is, I think, the biggest thing you need to think about. The second issue that I want to talk about is higher cost of refactoring. So the IDEs that we are using, if you're using Visual Studio or Sublime or IntelliJ, all of these IDEs have really, really good capabilities to do refactoring. So if you want to change a class, if you want to rename something, if you want to extract something out, it's really easy to do it when you are in one code base. As soon as you move into multiple code bases, it becomes a nightmare. And especially when you have a concept that spans across multiple services, it becomes really, really difficult to refactor that bit of the code. And I think Andy had it in his talk, refactor until it's simple. It's very hard when you have microservices to refactor it until it's simple. So here, I would say, build it as part of an existing service first, then refactor it until it's simple, then break it out as a different service. This gets especially hard when you're changing contracts. So if you're refactoring, changing the service contract, that makes things very, very difficult, because then you have to test it with everything else. And for that, I saw that a lot of people are using integration testing, which again makes things very slow and very hard. So just to help with that, make sure you're using consumer-driven contract testing, and tools like Pact are quite helpful. So this is a talk on its own how to do this, but have a look at Pact on GitHub. It's a very, very good tool and makes your whole integration test suite go away, and you unit test all of the contracts using Pact instead of integration testing them. So, and then that makes refactoring a lot easier. Another thing that makes refactoring hard is getting the service boundaries wrong. And that sounds pretty simple on paper, but in projects I've seen it that it becomes a big nightmare. So we all know developers become very, very passionate about where to put code, whether it's a different module, and in microservices, whether it's a different service, is it part of an existing service? And again, at student loans, I've been to meetings where they debated this for hours, sometimes for days, talking about where to put the new entity. Is it a new service? Is it part of an existing service? And this can create a lot of problems. Again, it makes you lose one of the biggest benefits of microservices as well. So this is another thing that you need to look for. And from my experience, try to add any new entity to an existing service. Never create it as a new service. And then build it as part of a new existing service. Do your refactoring. Make sure it's simple. On last responsible moment, once you're comfortable with the code, once you know enough about the code, then move it into a different service. So these were all the 3 points that I had. So I think I cut too much from this talk. So this talk was originally 45 minutes. When Mark told me it's only lightning talks, I cut a lot of slides. So, but the last one is general recommendations on how to do microservices. And this is again learning from experience. The first one is start very, very small. So Martin Fowler recently had an article, start with a monolith. I don't agree with that. I say start with 2 different services, don't start with a monolith. And then grow it from there. And that's how I did it on Astrolab. So we had only 2 services. We went live 8 weeks ago, and now we have 5 services. So once we were very, very comfortable with our releasing strategies, with our testing, and we were sure that we could deploy every single service independently, then we started to create more services. And now that we have many services, it means that different parts of the system can scale differently, so we don't need to scale everything or release everything together. And the last point is really just to make sure that you're comfortable with all of those practices before moving to microservices. So deployment automation, very, very important. Again, if you're using cloud computing, there are some really, really good tools out there to do it. Monitoring and troubleshooting is another one. So again, if you're starting with 2 services, it's quite easy to debug and test and troubleshoot 2 services. If you have more, it's hard. Get good at it first and then move to more services. And that was it. So, any questions?
You said that you started with 2,
Yeah.
but then now you have 5.
Yep.
Did the extra 3 come by splitting stuff out of the existing 2, or were they additional?
Yes.
Functionality?
No. They came out of like splitting the other ones into more services, and then one thing that we did, we built like a pipeline template that we could just drop some code in it, and it would just create a service and then release it and deploy it. And because it's really all of the process is automated, it's quite easy to say, okay, this whole entity, this bounded context makes sense to be its own service. So it's quite easy to just cut the code, put it in the service template, put it in the pipeline, and it will be released. So it's very, very little effort once you automate everything and you get good at those practices that I mentioned. Yeah?
Do microservices share a database?
No, they don't. And I think that's a big debate whether they should have shared storage or not. I personally think they shouldn't. One example project that I worked on was XPManchester, if you heard of it. So XPManchester, we had this issue that we had the timetable data in relational database format, and we had the whole route finding bit that we thought it could be a graph database, and we split it into 2 services. So there was one that was dealing with timetables, had a MySQL backend database, and the other service, which was in charge of route finding, had a graph database. Kate is laughing at me because we've talked about XPManchester so much. So, and we had 2 separate services, 2 different types of storage. So I think that's very helpful to use right tool for the job. So if you need to use a graph database, use graph database. If you need to use a document store, use a document store. Don't stick to like one big Oracle or SQL database. Yeah?
What influences your decision of when you should bring something up into a separate service?
So I think for me is when I have enough information, and it's when you know that domain well. And so I think, as Andy said, we write some code, we refactor it until it's simple. And when I think about all the code that I wrote in past, and it's always a point I said, oh, I could have broken this down to smaller pieces. So I think once I have enough information, I'll break it until I can. And I know size and microservices is now a big debate, but I like to think that it's a microservice if you can rewrite it in 2 weeks. Otherwise, it's bigger than a microservice. Cool. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Okay, so I'm Claire, and I work at Late Rooms. And the title of this talk is collaboration, but given that it's only 10 minutes, I'm pretty much going to focus on pair coding as a particular type of collaboration. But I think a lot of the lessons you can learn, or the things that I can say about pair coding, actually apply more generally to good collaboration practices as a team. I had my first software engineering job almost exactly 20 years ago, so it was October 95, I think. And apparently I discovered today Agile was around in the 90s, but I certainly hadn't heard of it. You know, I had no idea of its existence, and I didn't find out for a few years. But if at that point you had said to me that you had introduced the concept of sitting with another developer all day and working on the same computer at the same time, I would have been horrified. And certainly a few years later, when I and my colleagues did first hear about it, we were horrified. It was like, you must be kidding, you know, I mean, that just sounds like hell. And now, I do use pair coding on a daily basis. At Late Rooms, I'm using pair coding, and also the team is more collaborative than anywhere else I've ever worked. So I have used pair coding at one other company on a regular basis, but only one other company in 20 years, and I love it. But I've only been at Late Rooms for a few weeks, and I've been thinking about it a lot, and I've been thinking why I love it, and what's good about it. So, that's basically what I want to talk about. But there are disadvantages as well as advantages. And I used to be a high school maths teacher, and one of the things that you learn as a teacher is something called the sandwich technique, which is where you praise, and then you criticise, and then you praise again. So I'm going to do a few advantages, a few disadvantages, and then I'm going to come back to the advantages so that we end on a happy note. But can I just ask people to just shout out, give me what you think is an advantage of pair coding?
Quality.
Hands up, sorry?
Quality.
Quality, okay, yeah, so you get quality code as a result. The code has a better quality, okay? Gemma?
Check Twitter.
What's that?
Getting to check Twitter.
Okay, you get to check Twitter, that's interesting. So you reckon that you get to do that more as a part of pair coding?
I'm trolling you, love, it's alright.
Okay, well that was going to come up as one of the disadvantages, actually. So there you go. But more advantages?
Learning from other people.
Learning from other people. That's a brilliant one. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to go through my list. Some of this has already been covered. So I've got plugging gaps in each other's knowledge, which is the learning from each other. And I one company that I did work for, which was when I started to become more aware of collaborative practices. I worked for a company. Mark worked for the same company, where we were very much encouraged to ask questions. And when I arrived there, that was a breath of fresh air, because I had worked for companies, in fact I had worked for a company in the past, where all of the really important knowledge was in the heads of 2 people. And we all needed to ask some questions all the time, and they were never available because they were always firefighting, and they were the only people who knew anything. I didn't like asking questions because I didn't like mithering people, and I didn't want to look stupid. And so to be in an environment where questions were not only encouraged, but supposedly you could be sacked if you didn't ask enough of them, that was a breath of fresh air. And in pair coding, being able to actually say to somebody, I'm not sure what's the best way of doing this, and then learn from somebody, the person who's sitting right next to you, a better way of doing it, or just, finding out what's in their head, that's just really useful. So that's a great one. Getting help when you're stuck. Another company that I worked for, actually the same one where there were the 2 people who were really clever, I sat on a piece of software for weeks that I was barely making any progress on. And I could, because there weren't daily updates. Nobody was really asking me questions about what I was doing. In fact, I think that we thought that we were respecting each other by not mithering each other. And so I could just, get stuck, not ask for help. The longer I left it, the more embarrassed I was, the harder it was to admit that actually I don't know what I'm doing. I'm completely stuck. If you've got somebody sitting next to you, you get stuck, they know about it instantly. You can ask them, you're going to get help. And if both of you get stuck, I think it's a lot easier as a pair to say, we're stuck, than as an individual, because there's a bit less of that thing, oh God, I'm not really stupid. But if you're both stuck, then, it's easier to say to other members of the team, we're stuck. Another one is that when it does go wrong, you're much more likely to get back onto a good path. So, I have a horrible tendency to fall down rabbit holes and to get distracted by some irrelevant detail. And I know I'm doing it as well, but I just think, yeah, but it's really interesting. But I really do want to know what will happen if I keep, even though I know that actually it's probably irrelevant. If there's somebody sitting next to me, I can't get away with that, And so you're much more likely to get pulled back on track when you start veering off, because somebody's going to say, well, why? What are you doing? Why are you going in that direction? So that's another good one. Bad habits. You might have bad habits that you don't even know you've got, or you might have bad habits that you know you've got, but you can't be asked doing anything about it. And when there's somebody, again, sitting next to you, they're more likely to notice, they're more likely to suggest other ways of doing things. You're more likely to be embarrassed by the bad habit and just not do it in the first place. So there's that one. And code reviews happen automatically. I've worked in fact, most of the companies I've ever worked for have had the concept of code review. And I've never seen it work very well, because when it's done purely by one individual who writes a piece of software, another individual reviews it, because that other individual probably hasn't got time to understand it in depth, probably can't be asked to understand it in depth. You're not going to explain it to them properly. They may as well just sit next to you and do it with you, because they're going to understand it then, and they're going to be able to review it more effectively. So there's some advantages. Has anybody got any disadvantages? Sorry, say that again?
Quite stressful.
Stressful, yeah, it can be really stressful. Because, you know, you're kind of, you're exposed. You feel vulnerable, you know, because like, particularly if you think that the person sitting next to you knows more than you do, then you're just like, oh, I'm really embarrassed, I don't know what I'm doing, I think this is really stupid, I'm just going to let them do it all, or they're going to see how crap I am, and you know, it's just, you're constant, it's like you know, you can feel like you're being judged and observed constantly, and that can be horrible, but I think that's a really important one to address. So one of the things that I found is really useful is to say to myself, is to consciously focus on noticing when the other person makes the same mistakes that I would make. And go, right, okay. And also notice that the other person, unless they're absolutely amazing, is going to make mistakes, isn't going to understand everything, is going to ask stupid questions, and you need to notice that. You need to think, right, so other people do that too. I'm not as stupid as I thought I was. You know, so yeah, and you have to, it's something you have to address. And also, not only do you have to address in yourself, you have to be aware of it in other people. So if you're coding with somebody and you think they might be feeling a bit insecure, pick them up a bit, be nice to them, encourage them, let them have the keyboard, let them make mistakes and don't judge them when they do. So yeah, any other disadvantages?
Does it rob you of the chance to finish a train before?
That's a really good one. Yeah, so you might want to just focus on something, and because there's somebody like there's a few things in that. So for instance, I've noticed that I can feel like what I really want to do at this point is just have a bit of quiet time, because this is really complicated, and I'm feeling like, because there's somebody sitting next to me, that I have to understand it really quickly, and I haven't got time to just get my head around it. So there's that, and there's also, you know, just sometimes you can't focus, can't concentrate when there's somebody sitting next to you. At which point you say, shall we split up for a minute? Because I've done that now. I didn't do it at first because I felt kind of embarrassed and insecure, but I do that now. I say, look, this is actually really confusing me, and I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. So is it okay if we split up, go back to our own desks, and I just want to just kind of you know, tunnel in on it for an hour or so, and then we'll come back. And the 2 times that I have said that, 2 or 3 times, the other person has nearly always gone, oh yes, please. You know, they felt the same way, and even if they don't, they'll, you know, it's absolutely fine. And I think there's another disadvantage which can be burnout. It's intense. It's really intense. It can be exhausting. You do want to look on Twitter, you want to look on Facebook, you want to answer your text. You have slow days, you come into work, you're hungover, you don't feel like working with somebody else, you know. So you say, look, it's not a good day for me. I don't want to do pairing today. You know, is it okay if we just split up and work on it separately, or if I work on this other thing that I've got going on, or, you know, and that takes strength and it takes confidence, but it comes into something that I think is absolutely key, which is honesty. You know, be honest about how you feel, about how you understand, about what you think should be happening. If you're not in the mood, you know, just all of it, be as honest as you possibly can, because it really makes a difference. How am I doing for time? I forgot to put my timer on.
We're probably ahead of schedule because everyone's been well behaved so far. So.
Okay, so I'm badly behaved. Yes.
We are banking time for Matt though, so.
Okay, well, I was just checking. So, any more disadvantages?
It's a waste of resources.
It's a waste of resources. Of course it bloody is. It's 2 people. Yeah. It's a massive waste of resources. It's 2 people, probably on quite high salaries, doing one job. So yeah, it can easily look like that. But then you think about the fact that you probably will move more quickly. You might not. You probably will. But even if you don't, you're sharing knowledge. So you know you're because otherwise, whatever that piece of work is, you know, no matter how much you try and make it self-commenting and try and share it, the knowledge is going to be more in the head of the person that did it. And also, chances are, within a team, you're going to have a mixture of skills, you're going to have a mixture of strengths, there are going to be things that you're good at, things that your colleagues are good at, they're not going to be the same things. By working together, you're sharing those skills, you're making yourself much more efficient, you're sharing domain knowledge. The long-term benefit of that, it's very difficult to measure, but I think it's big. And then there's the code review element of it, the QA element of it, the fact that you're so much more likely to write a quality piece of code. So you know, it's hard to quantify, but you know, I mean, I think probably I'm aware that I'm probably preaching to the converted. I think probably, if not everybody, then most people in this room are probably already sold on it. But yeah, it's great to have an employer that gets that can see that actually it's not a lot of efficiency, or if it is, it's worth it. I've got another disadvantage is complacency, because I think what can happen is you can be very much, complacency is definitely a problem when you're working on your own. And you can assume that because you're working in a pair, therefore you can't possibly be being complacent. But actually what can happen, and I have seen it happen, is that because you're working in a pair, you assume that therefore it's bound to be quality and you're bound to be doing it the best way. Actually, you're just both making the same mistakes and you're both being lazy. And you're just assuming it will all be fine purely by merit of being in a pair, and you know, that's not necessarily true. And cutting corners, this is kind of comes back to that thing I was saying of not necessarily thinking about something in depth because you're worried about not working fast enough or pissing the other person off. So I've found that sometimes you can cut corners because you don't want to look stupid or because you don't want to slow things down. So I quite often will think, actually, I'm not really sure I understood that bit, or I'm not actually convinced that was the best test, or you know, that was the best piece of code, but I'm aware that we're in a bit of a rush, and so I won't say anything. Or I'm a bit OCD. I like to make sure that everything is right, and I know that I do that more than some other people do, and I kind of, sometimes I go, oh, I won't say anything, because I'll just piss them off. But don't, you know, trust your instincts. That's the kind of coder that I am. So it's at least worth me saying, look, I'm not convinced that we double check this thing over here. Can we just check that again? At which point the other person can have an argument with me and say, well, actually, no, it's fine because it's A, B, and C. But it means that I've voiced that concern. So, you know, that's another. It can be tempting not to do that. That's another one that you have to watch out for. So I'm going to finish with advantages. So. Another advantage is that you get the opportunity to properly discuss disagreements and alternative ways of working. So, you know, if you're not convinced about the best way of doing it, or you don't agree, because you're sitting next to each other, you can actually talk about it properly. You know, not in a meeting where everybody's you know, like that. Actually, properly consider what you're doing, and. I've already said this one actually, but I do think it's important is to pay attention to what other people are doing and notice that they're not perfect either. You know, and I think pair coding could easily result in you feeling insecure and miserable, or it could result in you feeling confident and happy, and the attitude that you bring to it will determine which one of those it is. So if I'd say just two things, ask questions, be honest, keep doing it over and over again, keep asking questions, keep being as honest as you possibly can. That doesn't mean telling them when they've got BO, but if you can, be honest.
Okay, so I feel like my talk is on a much smaller topic than everyone else's. And I don't have slides, I've got post-it notes because we're agile. So this is based on an article that J.B. Rainsberger wrote a few years ago that I'll tweet the link out to afterwards because he will undoubtedly say it better than I will. So how many people here have Kanban boards? Okay, almost everyone. Cool, that means I don't have to explain that. So, how many people always pick the top item in their ready column? Okay. That means this might be practical advice for a few people. So, let's imagine this. If I can get my post-it notes.
Shake green skills.
If you deal your post-it notes from the side, then they don't curl up and fall off. Okay, so let's say this is our ready column, and this is our doing column, and over here shortly will be our done column. So let's assume that we're not always picking from the top. So someone's picked this one. Next up, they see this one and they think, actually this looks really difficult. I don't fancy doing that. I'll pick this one. Next person finishes that bit of work, sees this one, thinks, actually that's pretty hard too. Let's pick this one. And all the time, things are just moving up here. So you don't have any visibility that actually you've still got the same thing at the top, and it's not moving through. So actually what you're doing here is you're hiding the fact that you have a second queue, a second ready column for people who want to do the hard thing. So, and this has a few big disadvantages. Firstly, and most obviously, this bit of work isn't getting done. And secondly, you're also introducing competition into your team because everyone's fighting to do this bit, not this bit. No one wants to be left with the point where there's only this bit left, so everyone's rushing to do the other stuff instead. So how should this be working? So rather than just move our ready column over to here. So what should happen is someone should finish a bit of work, pick the top one, and even if it's a bit harder, go ahead and do it anyway. Now, the advantage of working this way is you're lowering cycle time. So the time from when something enters your ready column to when it enters your done column. Disadvantage is you may not be the best suited person to do that piece of work. So if something is particularly complicated, then if you're a more junior developer, then you're more likely to struggle with that. So what can we do about that? I'd say I call this idea what I call truly cross-functional teams. And by that I don't mean that you should be getting your product owner and your BAs to all learn coding and all be expert developers, because that would be a terrible idea. What I mean is that everyone of a particular function, for example a developer, should be able to pick up any task. That sounds kind of almost a bit of a pipe dream, but I think that is achievable. If you have enough slack in your system so that you can mentor your more junior developers and pair on them so that they can know what you know whilst working together on a more complicated task, then they'll get up to speed more quickly, and next time they won't be fighting for those easier tasks. Does that make some sort of sense to it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was everything. I seem to have rushed really quickly. So, yeah. Any questions? No? Okay. Cool.
Before we start, should we have a 5-minute break so we either will find some chairs or might we?
5 minutes, everyone needs a loo or a drink. There might be
So, what do you find yourself with the mix box? I think you're into it. When would you primarily use it? About 8 or 10 pajama.
She wouldn't have passed in a type.
I saw a year later, it's like the same school. So like, how is that? What's the move? Just get jealous and shout.
We ended up being so friendly and
Back to the small world, coming together. 7 degrees of separation, we're not very far away from people.
If everyone would like to, I would say find a seat, but get back into relatively viewable positions. We have 2 more talks. If anybody else, if we have time at the end, which Matt and Gemma are going next, means we probably won't. If anyone likes to do a ad hoc talk, feel free to volunteer. We had a fantastic one last year, very inspirational. Please remember bit.ly/xpman61 for speaker feedback and for the JetBrains raffle. See you.
Feel free to do an ad hoc talk over mine if you like. Right. So, show of hands, first of all. That's about as abstract as it gets. So, who writes code? Yeah. Who works in a language that encourages abstractions? Object-oriented language. Who doesn't write code, but occasionally thinks, yeah, that's a good start. Okay, who doesn't write code on a regular basis? Okay, so not many. It's a bit techy, this one, so that's fine. But there are abstractions, I think, that aren't always apparent exactly what they are. And is that me? That's abstract enough. So there are abstractions that I think some of them we're very familiar with, and some we're not so familiar with. So if I were to say shape, triangle, square, circle, animal, dog, yeah, all the typical very early stuff you might do in your object-oriented experiments very early on in your career, probably. Well, we're going to talk about abstractions that aren't typically technical, but when you're faced with a technical choice, they can become quite contentious. And there's been quite a lot of debate around what the abstraction is. So, if you're writing code, you're delivering products, you're most likely dealing with this as an abstraction, a customer. So, what I'm going to talk about is a scenario that happened to us in a recent product development sprint, and it was just interesting because we didn't expect the abstraction to cause so much debate. So we're working with a customer, we want to introduce them to our product. We're not going to make any revenue, let's face it, if we're not introducing our customers to our product. So in this case, let's call that product a policy, an insurance policy. So, first question is, how do we go about introducing our customers to these products? In our case, it's very simple. We've got a digital journey down here, which consists of an application that can run on browsers and handsets. And as soon as you start to introduce the idea of a digital journey, introducing your customers to policies, then you start to think about other things. So when is the customer a visitor to your digital journey? When do they progress or promote to being an applicant? Then it's the point where they might want to actually apply for a policy. Then it gets a little bit more complicated, because in our implementation, which at the moment seems pretty simple because we've got a nicely constructed domain, if you like. Digital journey down here. Problem here is that we've got a third party that we have to integrate with for various reasons. That third party is giving us the ability to identify our visitors, our applicants, our customers, so that we can, through regulatory guidance and regulatory due diligence and all the rest of it, actually allow this person who's visiting and who's applying to hold a policy. The complication for us, of course, is that that third party has a very specific idea, a very specific abstraction that they want us to know about and to use if they provide that service to us. So they've got an idea of a session. So if you can imagine that session you make a call out to has an authentication token. So it starts to become a technical boundary context. Something is starting to make us think very heavily about what do sessions mean. Okay? So that's on the one side. Remember it's a third party, completely external system. And there's no way we can get away from using that session. You have to have an authentication token if we're going to have any interaction with that third party. Forgetting the domain for a second, go all the way back to what we're actually meant to be doing, which is delivering a digital journey, compelling website, nice journey, good UX, good UI, everything that you want. And on the other side of the landscape, we also have a session. This boundary context is all about HTTP. And there's a controller in there. In our case, it's don't boo or hiss. In our case, it's a spring controller. Yeah. So whether we like it or not, if we want to deliver a digital journey that introduces customers to policies and be compliant with regulations, we have to use this third party. We've got a session over here with authentication tokens and all the rest of it. And a session over here which has your web server lifecycle, an idea of the identity of the visitor, the requests and responses and stuff like that. But really, we're quite happy and comfortable with the fact that we've got a domain that's quite expressive. We don't want to lose that abstraction. The abstraction's in here, it's a neutral boundary context, it's clean, it works, it's been fully tested, all the rest of it. But we somehow have to resolve the information in a session from a third party with the information in a session on the controller. If we're going to allow that person to visit and successfully hold policy. So the problem we had is that we really didn't want to introduce the word session into our domain. Because customers, policies, visitors, applicants, products, things like that, it just didn't seem the right place for it to go. So the temptation, of course, was to skip around here, and start to share that information and completely avoid all of the value that neutral domain boundary context was giving us, which is obviously wrong. That's not going to work. So somewhere there was an abstraction for a session. HTTP session, some obscure third-party session. How are they ever going to meet in the middle? Then something interesting happened when we started to talk to SMEs a bit more, QAs and BAs, and we tried to raise the level of abstraction a bit, because there had to be a way for sessions to be built. There just had to be. And it was quite a surprising thing that happened. We forgot about all our technical boundary contexts, HTTP, REST, or whatever's over here. I think it's SOAP actually. Yeah. Now you can see. Fitting that together. So, we did I don't know if this is triangulation, but something happened that broke that deadlock. Some kind of triangulation happened where we were too embedded, we need to solve this technical problem. How the hell do we get a session to work on it? And we just thought about, well, high street. So this vendor, this provider of policies has a high street outlet. And if you're a customer who's visiting that high street outlet, and you happen to talk to an advisor there, the likelihood is that you're going to start a session with that advisor to talk about applying for a policy. And that advisor is going to take you on a journey in a session, a one-to-one session, and ultimately you're going to end up with a policy and walk out happy. So, this is when we start to think, well, session seems to, it does belong here. It does belong here. Why should we have to take shortcuts and go around like that? That domain should have a session there. So it's pretty much what we did. Stuck the session in there. So to technical eyes, it looks like it is on. But now the QA, BA, the SMEs in business, perfectly happy that we've modelled a session that was neither bound to technical constraints, actually modelled on what actually happens out in our high street. So it gets interesting then. Scenarios that fall out of that abstraction are things like abandon. So when the visitor to the website abandons that session, closes the browser, or decides that we've got an interesting policy we want to instrument that, we'll capture it, and maybe send them an email to say, look, we've noticed you've dropped out of the digital journey. Is there anything we're doing wrong? Would you like to come back and restart the application, or continue the application? We've modelled it. We can call session abandoned. Job done. Session abandoned here, of course, would invalidate this session, invalidate that session, and in another bounding context down here, send out an email. What's surprising about that is that when we put another context in, which we haven't really thought about at the time, which is support context, and started to think about who we could talk to about that, we saw that this is porting adapters, surprise, surprise. Then in support context, if we had another web app here that was wholly owned by the business, but we're still concerned about what sort of journey is going on over here, the support context port quite happily abandon that session if it thought it was suspicious activity or something like that. So that's about it. It was an interesting one for us because we saw that the two technical constraints were needed to be resolved, and being developers who like to discover things on whiteboards, we really found ourselves a little bit narrow in our view of what a session was. When we opened it up, raised that level of abstraction up a bit, we found that we could put it in there, and it opened up all sorts of other discussions with other areas of the business, other contexts, most interesting of all is high street context and support context. That's it. That's what happened. That's all. Any questions on my drawing skills? So you all got it then. Okay, so anything that's wasn't clear or... Yeah.
Is there a danger that if there's ever a real bounded context, like the concept of a session might be very different from each one, and trying to sort of bring them all together into the same thing? Is that not a danger that you kind of crossing those bounded contexts, the idea of what session is?
Well, bounded contexts can express the same thing. And that's where context maps come in. Yeah. So a session down here might have something to do with Spring life cycle model or something like that. The session up here was primarily concerned with their authorization token. So completely different shapes to these things. But yes, some common ground here, in terms of methods, in terms of actual behaviour. But session is perfectly fine in the domain-driven design sort of way, because your bounding contexts are intended to be mapped using context maps. So anti-corruption layers. So what we've got here is an anti-corruption layer that says, okay, we understand we have to deal with authorization tokens. We get that you've got a session and we have to use it. But we're not necessarily going to use it the way that, literally, we're going to map it to what a session means to us. Likewise here. Thank you very much.
I'm here at Pinwheel, so talk amongst yourselves while I try and get this set up.
Do you need HDMI or?
I would have brought my HDMI cable thing, but it's over there. This will do.
This is called the adapters.
Yeah, just talk amongst yourselves. Get a beer. Right, what's on my screen before I pull a game? Yay!
No, it's gone again.
It's
back again.
Yay!
It's back again.
So, you know how we've now got all this nice free time? I think we might end up taking it all up at the end of mine.
It's expected.
Yeah. Half of my first gin and tonic got knocked over, so I'm nowhere near as pissed as I should be. Right. Book free codes. Yay! So, Kirsty billed this as the book free backlog. But where I work at the moment, which was with the lovely Jimothy, who was doing the post alerts before, we work without a backlog. It's like pantomime this. Come on, a bit more. There's no backlog. So when I talk about this, the biggest question people always ask is, well, how are you going to track the books? It's Velociraptor. Let that one sink in. So that's the biggest question people always ask me. So that's my answer. We simply do not have bugs. We have bug-free code. Honest.
Didn't Microsoft say this as well?
This is you lot right now. Oh really? No bugs? Tell me more. Is that right?
Can we
Yeah.
sing? Can you do the rest of this talk without any music?
I got very lazy before. I was also planning to do a talk across the road for the Manchester Digital Council, so if I start lapsing into, I'm Gemma, I've been a developer for 10 years, you should vote for me. That's why. So, yeah, this is usually the thing that people don't really believe me, that we have bug-free code. Well, you'd be right. I don't write bug-free code. Nobody does. I definitely don't, as most people who work with me probably know. So, what am I actually talking about? This. We don't have bugs. So when I talk about bug-free code, I mean we don't tolerate them. We just don't have them. Make sense? No. Right. It's because when a bug comes along, we stop what we're doing and we fix it. There's so many memes. I went through all the characters and I was like, I can do one for each one. That's usually James hitting me, by the way. Don't you all wish you were James? Yeah, so as soon as a bug comes along, we literally just drop whatever we're doing, we throw everything at it, and we get rid of it. Making sense now? A little bit more? No more memes. So, how we've done it is quite simple. Firstly, we started off with greenfield development, so we had no bugs to begin with, which is something that I know you all envy and wish you had. We TDD, and because we're test driving, because we're writing all these tests all the time, it means that bugs that do come up, we can squash them and they're not going to come back. And we've got confidence in our software. Because we've got our confidence in our software, we can continuously deploy. So literally just change a line at a time and it goes out all the time. So we're doing things like we're doing microservices like I touched on before. Probably not well, probably not right, but you know, we're trying. And this no backlog really, really helps. Because we don't have a backlog, it means that the bug can't go to the bottom of that list and live there for a bit and get pushed down and pushed down and pushed down because there's more important things. Who thinks bugs are important? So why do we keep them in a bug tracker? Why do we let them all hole up? Why do we give it to the new starters in the team, all the graduates that come in, all the second-class citizens, to fix bugs? Why? We don't tolerate them. But who are you looking at then? Who's a second-class citizen to you, Coastals?
He's a graduate, sorry.
No offence, mate. And the only reason we've been able to have no backlog is because we've got trust in our team. So how we work, we are in a room with so a company that I work at the moment, Allegro Networks. We automate the internet, literally automate the internet. So you know the internet's made up of lots of interconnected networks. So the internet is. That's what we do. We connect those together. And in our room we've got network engineers who know the domain. So touching on what Mr. Cannon. Hi, Mr. Cannon. So we can speak about the abstractions. We've got someone there to talk to. So because we're working in this very quick way, where it's literally just changing a line of code, we've got the people there in the room that need to ask questions and continually keep adjusting on understanding the language and what we're working on. It means we can do that because we have them there. Again, something that not everybody has, and I appreciate this. So yeah, this is something that we do. So. And when we started at the company, well, when I started the company, it was complete greenfield, brand new startup inside an existing company that already had the network and dark fibre. Everybody sat there and had all these ideas about how it should look, how it should work, all the features it should have, and they built this massive list of shit. And I started doing all the BA things of like writing them all down on post-it notes and then writing them up in a wiki for people. And spending all my days writing shit out that I really wasn't enjoying. And I finally thought, why the hell am I doing this? So, unbeknownst to everybody else, I got all these post-it notes and I threw them in the bin. I think I need more drama there, come on! That's better. And I was able to do that because people really like it when you write their ideas down. This is something I learned a long time ago. If you write down their idea, it's out of their head and it's your problem now. And they'll shut up and they'll stop banging on about it. If we'd have done every single thing that had been in that massive big pile around that table, one, we wouldn't release the product, especially not in 90 days. Two, it would have done so much shit that nobody wanted and nobody needed. There was all these talks about it should be like the London Underground. It wasn't. It's not that.
On strike.
That was a really good joke. So, they didn't know that I'd thrown everything away. They still thought we had this big backlog of stuff that was going to be done. We eventually managed to sort of train people by going, okay, we've finished this feature and they can see us working all the time. And because we're continuously getting out the door, we've got the people in the room. So again, we had the engineers, but we also had the CTO. And in the main room, so a short walk away, because you know, if you work with computers, you can stand up, walk over, and talk to people. With your mouth! And your eyes! And your hands! If you're slightly Italian. And we even had the sales team, so we had everybody in there, everyone could see that we were delivering. And the way we got away with this no backlog is by every time we finish something, we go, right, what's the most important thing for us to work on right now? And that ended up building up this trust with everybody to the point where we did have like 3 things on the board. That's kind of our backlog, very loose. Someone will go up and go, that's been on for about a week or 2 now. Picking it up off the board, rolling it into a ball and throwing it in the bin. And that made me so happy. Has anybody else seen that?
No.
I got skills. But yeah, write things down, get them out of people's heads, I really like that. But yeah, because you're continuously deploying, your code's always in a completely working state. And if you have managed to build anything up on your machine, it's no more than an hour or two's work that you can just throw away. And because you are working on stuff in such small chunks, the distraction of taking away and having to delve into something else because you've not understood a feature right, or someone's done something really, really retarded and completely wrong against the way you design your system, because you know, users. Yeah? Should have got more laughs. We need someone here with sounds. Thanks. Fantastic laughs. So yeah, because of that, we can stop what we're doing, we can fix a bug, we can change things, and we can take stock and go, okay, what's the most important thing to do now? Okay? I've lit the building. Anyone got any questions? Yes!
So, like, what happens when you drop it and the resource to fix the problem?
The resource? The resource? The people?
The resource. Yeah, it knocks out well, you don't complete your sprint. Yeah? So,
Sorry, I didn't hear that last
you
bit.
don't complete your sprint. So you
A
don't-
sprint?
Yeah.
Just digging a hole for yourself, mate.
We've got no backlog, we've got no sprints, mate.
So you just continue. So who monitors the time?
Oh, nobody does that. Because we have this. Because we're all working together, we all trust that the work gets done. And they can see that we're working, we're not just sat there brewing up all the time. Oh, no. We're not there on Twitter. Oh, wait. No, they can see that we're working, and because we're continuously delivering, and we're delivering valuable stuff, because we're constantly checking what is it we need right now, and we're doing the minimum possible to satisfy that so we can deliver quickly. Even when we go through a period of refactoring something, the team understands. Probably because we've got quite a technical team, but we're also tiny. There's 15 people in the entire company, or there was until we got acquired, now it's huge. So,
Yeah, I like it.
I'd say, what happens when the...
Oh.
Sorry.
yeah,
The,
no, it's fine.
The effort of fixing the bug far outweighs the value of fixing it.
Okay, so the value of fixing the bug outweighs the value of leaving it.
So yeah, it hardly ever occurs. It's like an edge case, we'll just ignore it for now, maybe we'll come back to it if it gets worse. Do you just drop everything to try and fix that one thing when you've got features that are going to get you more value into the business or get you more money?
Are you talking about being pragmatic? There you go. What do you think is the answer?
I would say do the most important thing.
So, that bug, to us, you'd write in a post-it note, and you'd look at it and go, yeah, this is a pain in the ass, this is a real edge case. Really, how often is this happening? And you throw it in the bin.
So you throw it in the bin.
Yeah.
Forget about
One of the reasons as well, people like things being thrown in the bin, and something I didn't really touch on, and the reason we don't have this, we do really, because you have it in your head. Important shit comes back. So if that bug comes up again and again and again, and you make the wrong call and you're meaning to get it sorted, if it never comes back again, yay!
What if the people who have left have actually saw it in the first place?
It's a good question, and again, that will come down to retention and making money, and actually that's the most important thing here. Let's sort it, speak to that customer, delight them. Don't laugh! How many of you can pick up a phone and talk to a customer? Thanks, bastards. How many of you can pick up a phone and talk to an actual real live customer? 1, 2, brilliant! That's good. Stop it.
I tend to text them more often.
Yeah, you do. At what, 3 o'clock in the morning? Yeah, so actually ringing up a customer and saying, hey, you found this problem, we've fixed it now, or ring up, hey, you found this problem, can I just talk through how it happened? We've also got very, very technical customers because the people we're selling to are like, we're like an ISP for ISPs, as James likes to explain it. So our customers are very, very technical. They've got data centres, they've got engineers. They usually are using some weird browser like Opera and some weird operating system like Red Hat or something weird. And they've probably got all their JavaScript turned off and ad blockers and all this shit, so nothing's going to work. So it's good to ring them up and talk to them, and they really value that. We've got quite a small customer base as well, which is nice because it means you can actually do that and take the time to do it. And then when you fixed it, ring them up, delight them, yay, more money, and kudos, and they refer you to their friends and shit like that. You had a question, sorry? Yes, guy, you knocked over my gin.
It's basically the same question. It's just about the opportunity cost of fixing. So it's more really that you don't track the bugs. So it's not that you fix every single bug as soon as it happens, but rather the ones that aren't worth fixing, you don't bother tracking them instead of things that
Yeah, if you want to say that. That sounds much more succinct than that. Oh, sorry, Dan.
Do you think there's anybody in the organisation who's got a secret list? And when you say what should we do next, they secretly consult their secret list?
No. And I can guarantee that because we are, like, I'm sat opposite, literally opposite the CTO, and if he had a list, I'd be very shocked because he's got so much that he's having to do. So he's having to do technical vision, company, try and sell things, try and even go to data centres and, like, you know, fix things as well. So we're all maxed out, we're all having to sort of chip in where we can. Even like sitting on service desk and taking phone calls on Christmas Eve and things like that. Go on, Timothy. Why was that appropriate?
So, and this question isn't a plan, it's just something that occurred.
Bullshit!
How do you stop yourself reaching like almost a local optimum? I mean, how do it's a weird saying you. How do we stop ourselves like going off down the wrong path by always doing the most important thing but not getting to an end goal which could be better than the sum of the all of the important things?
So that, yeah, that's good, and I can see where you got that from. Segueing from your talk. So one of the things we do, we don't do retros either. We don't do retros because it's just me and James. We've got the rest of the guys in the company as well, but we found that we didn't need to do retros because we were constantly having them. So we're constantly sitting there going, are we working on the right thing right now? Is this making us money? Is this improving us? Are we delivering value? And you can end up going down this little rabbit hole. And another thing, we don't pair. We do pair organically, but if we paired all the time, because again it is the two of us, I think James would have probably killed me. Anybody who's paired with me wanted to kill me.
I confirm.
And if it was just me day in, day out for over a year.
That was half of that.
Quite gone brain. But it means that we can just sort of stop and go, should I be doing this? And we've not just got each other, we've also got the rest of the guys in the team. And we've got Neg, who, he's just a genius, isn't he? I think that's his job title. Ned can do anything. Ned can do coding, he can do monitoring, he can go do network engineering, he can just do everything. And he does it really well. He's absolutely amazing. But he kind of gives us our steering of where we should be going all the time as well, and that really helps. Answer your question? So, who wants to go and try bug-free code? Who wants to go and try bug-free code? You can be like this little girl too. Charles. dropped it.
There is one.
Please do not.
I've got another question. Why did the sparky bracelet have to come off and then go back on again?
I don't like things on my wrist. By the way, I wore this when I met the Queen last year. Did you know I met the Queen? I bet you've not heard.
What's this was?
Might. Also, you know, it might have reflected off and blinded Jim, although I should have kept it on. Welcome back, everybody! Jim's here! Hey! Does anybody know who Jim is? Thanks, guys. You've been a great audience. Try the fish.
We're done. That's all of the scheduled speakers for tonight.
Hey!
However, as I said, last year we had a very inspired, off-the-cuff talk in the dying minutes of the day. Would anybody like to stand up and say a few words that they ate? Anything or anything. Failing that, we can all continue the discussions in the pub.
Hey!
Okay, let's go to the English Lounge. It's on High Street. It's...
Not common.
No. Go that way a little bit, and you'll find it.
Platform is not that way.
It's that way. It's definitely that way. Shit.
That point made, let's go that way.
No. bit.ly/xpman61.
Tweet it. You know Twitter.
I will use the Twitters if any of you are aware of that.
Just because we only got 5 people to ask me.
We did slightly better this month.
Very quick. Is anybody following tech events, Manchester Northwest thing? Raise your hand if you are. And we've not heard of it, so raise your hands. Okay, if you go to techmw.uk, techmw.uk, and you follow us on Twitter, techmwuk, you can see a nice calendar of all the tech events that are going on in and around Manchester, and they're put in and maintained by the organisers apart from him, because I have to do it for him. So you can see all the different events that are going on, and I tweet about XPManchester more than him.
Again, cheers.